Well, hello and welcome to the Parrish Backyard. We're here today to talk about herbs, from plant to spices. And we hope you enjoy the program. I'm Laura Petty, County Extension Agent for Family and Community Health here in Leon County.
And I'm Richard Parrish. I'm the County Extension Agent for Agriculture and Natural Resources in Leon County.
Well, we hope you enjoy our program today. We're going to be talking about herbs, everything from growing them and then moving into harvesting them and drying them. And I'll finish off by sharing some recipes using some of these herbs so that we can limit the intake that we do of salt, but enjoy our flavors through the herbs and spices that we can enjoy making in our own kitchen. So we hope you enjoy.
There are many ways to define an herb. In the botanical sense, an herb is an herbaceous plant that lacks a woody stem and dies to the ground each winter. Another definition describes herbs as any plant or plant part that has historically been used for culinary or fragrance purposes. And a broad definition of herb is defined as a useful plant. But one must wonder what is meant by useful. Well, with a broad look at the word herb, it's possible to include hundreds of plants that fit that definition of useful plant. While many herbs are in fact herbaceous, there are a lot that do develop woody stems. A gardener may wish to choose herb plants that maybe have a culinary value or maybe even an aromatic value. And in addition to these traditional qualities, many herbs also offer a great deal of ornamental value to the garden as well. Well, regardless on how you plan on using your herbs, there's a certain degree of satisfaction in using the herbs that you've grown for yourself. Let's spend a little time talking about how we might go about growing those culinary herbs. Herbs can be grown in the flower beds, they can be grown in rock gardens, they can be grown in pots or containers such as these here that we have around us here. Some herbs are annuals, meaning that they grow, and they complete their life cycle in one growing season or 1 year. And then there's others that are perennials, which means once after they're planted, they come back for several years. So we've got those two categories, annual and perennial herbs. Annual herbs may be planted in an annual flower garden or even a vegetable garden. Plant perennial herbs along the side of the garden where they will not interfere with next year's soil preparation. Many gardeners establish a small herb garden near the home. Generally, a 6 to 10 square foot square or rectangular space is sufficient for most home gardeners for the herbs that they're going to be using. Whenever you're planting your herbs, you want to plant the tallest herbs towards the back of the garden plot. Plant your smaller herbs towards the front. Care for your herb garden as you would a vegetable or a flower garden. Choose a sunny, well-drained location. This might include a raised bed garden. With a raised bed garden, you're going to get a good drainage, good well-drained soil. It might be a container garden, or you might even grow them in the landscape, grow those herbs in the landscape around your house. Water the herbs as necessary during dry periods. Adding mulch to your herb garden can help to conserve that soil moisture, and it also helps to reduce the weed growth that might take place in your herb garden. So by reducing that weed growth, you're reducing the competition with other weeds that's fighting for your herbs for nutrients in the soil. So for an annual or a biennial herbs such as basil or cilantro or dill or even parsley, just to name a few, plant those seeds directly in the garden or start them indoors, maybe for later transplanting. You can obtain seeds from your local garden center or from seed catalogs, or you can save the seeds that your herbs produce this season and save those seeds for next year's crop. To save your herb seeds, harvest the entire seed head after it is dried on the plant. So at the end of the season and that herb starts to bolt, collect the seed head and let it dry. So allow those seed heads to dry in a cool, dry, protected location. And after those seeds are thoroughly dried, thresh them from the seed heads, and then you can discard those seed heads in the trash. So you might want to thresh them into a paper sack so that you can collect those seeds, and then you can discard the old seed head into the trash. Store the seeds in labeled jars in a dark, cool, dry location. Some herb seeds, such as dill or anise or even coriander, can be used as a flavoring. Now, perennial herbs such as chives or even mints or rosemary, even sage, can be propagated by divisions or cuttings. So for our chives, we would of course take our chives and we could separate our chives. That would be division. Whereas with our mint, we might take a cutting from our mint and propagate mint from a cutting. Of course, regardless of whether you're growing annual or perennial herbs, you can find transplants at many lawn and garden centers. Using transplants is a way to get a jump start on establishing herbs in your landscape, and it's a jump start for getting those herbs on your dinner plate as well. So for division of herbs, you might take your chives, for example, and you might divide the plants every 3 to 4 years in the early spring. Dig up the plants, cut them or divide them into several sections. Chives and lovage and tarragon can be propagated by dividing the roots or the crowns. Now, to propagate by cuttings, like we might do with our mint or even with our rosemary, we might cut 4 to 6 inch sections of the stem. And then we're going to root those by placing those cuttings in a moist sand in a shady area. The roots should start to form on those cuttings within about 4 to 8 weeks. Herbs such as sage or winter savory or even thyme can be propagated by cuttings. One of the nice things about many of the culinary herbs that you can grow is that you can harvest them throughout the year. I mean, you don't have to wait until the end of the season. You can harvest them at any time during the growing season. The leaves of many herbs such as parsley and chives can be harvested for fresh seasonings. On these plants, you're gradually going to remove some of the leaves or the stems as needed. But don't remove all of the foliage at one time. That's a great way to kill your plant. So with proper care, the herb plants will produce over a long period of time. For rosemary and thyme, clip the tops when the plants are in full bloom. Well, now that we know about harvesting our herbs, what should we do with them? How should we go about using these herbs? That's where Laura is going to come in and talk about how do we use and save these herbs.
Well, like Richard said, we always enjoy the herbs throughout the growing season, and there's times when we can't seem to use it or give enough away. So a step for allowing us to enjoy our herbs throughout the winter time would be to dry them. And so we're going to talk about harvesting your herbs for using in the kitchen, whether it be right now or really specifically what I'm going to focus on is drying herbs so that we can use them into the future. And with that, I'm also going to share we're going to talk about the 4 types of dehydration, and that would be oven drying, microwave drying, air drying, and probably the most popular is our dehydrator drying. So those are the 4 methods we're going to talk about. And then I'm going to finish up by talking about or sharing some recipes using some different herbs and spices to flavor our food to help us to reduce the sodium in our diet. And so we hope you enjoy those recipes and hope you enjoy learning about the different methods of drying our herbs so that we can enjoy them for many months to come. And again, they make great gifts. Those spice mixes make great gifts. So share those with other folks and enjoy as we focus on herbs and what we can do with them to enjoy them in the kitchen. Okay, so we're going to go over some tips on harvesting herbs for drying. So we want to make sure that we dry herbs the same day that we pick them. We want them to be at that peak of perfection when we harvest them. And they're ready to be picked before the flower bud begins to open. And at this point is when the herbs have the highest amount of oils, which provide that flavor and aroma that we're really trying to get. You want to pick the herbs early in the morning. You want to do it after the dew has dried, but before it gets too hot. And I know that doesn't take too long in the middle of summer. Handle our herbs very carefully so that you don't bruise them or damage them in any way. We want them to be, again, at the highest quality. You can rinse your herbs under cool running water and then just give them a little shake or pat them dry. Remove the leaves that are maybe damaged or don't look so good, or if they're just so dirty they can't be cleaned. And any kind of stems or leaves that just don't look good should just be discarded. You know, something you can add to your compost bin. And then herbs are sufficiently dried when the leaves become crispy and crumble, and when the stems break when they are bent. So we're going to talk about 4 methods of drying herbs. We're going to talk about dehydrator, oven, microwave oven, and air drying. We'll start off by talking about probably the most popular method for drying many things is in your dehydrator. And there are several different models of dehydrators out there. But this does usually give the best results because the temperature can be controlled as well as the air circulation, and it helps to just get those herbs dried evenly. You want your dehydrator preheated to about 115 degrees, depending again on the humidity in your area. And again, you certainly want to follow the manufacturer recommendations for your particular dehydrator. You can place the rinsed herbs in a single layer on the dehydrator and then dry them, again depending on the herb itself and also depending on the manufacturer of your dehydrator, but looking at probably 1 to 4 hours is probably good enough. Next, we're going to talk about air drying, which is probably an old-fashioned way, and we've done it for many, many years. So you can just hang herbs just in a bundle as long as it's in a well-ventilated room, attic, or maybe on the porch. You want to tie that bunch of herbs together. This is herbs like our rosemary, sage, and thyme. You want them to be in small bundles, and you can hang those to dry. Now, herbs can be dried outdoors, but for the best flavor and color, you want to do it indoors. Tender herbs such as basil, mint, and lemon balm, they have high water content and they'll mold easily. So if it takes too long for them to dry, you want to be very careful and keep an eye on those. Another way you can do it is to gather into the bundles and place those in a paper bag with holes, and these holes just allow for better air circulation. And then kind of a bonus is after you close it and close that bag and hang it, the bonus of the bag is that the leaves or seeds that fall off can be caught in that bag and you can use them for other things. You want to check the herbs very regularly until drying is complete. So again, depending on the humidity around your area, you may want to consider other methods of drying. Okay, oven drying is another method that we could use to dry our herbs. So it is a good choice for those herbs where the leaves can be easily removed from the stem, and this could include like oregano, mint, or bay leaves. Remove the leaves from the washed herbs and place them in a single layer on a paper towel. And we want to make sure we spread our herbs out so that they're not touching. And then you want to cover those leaves with another paper towel and place the herbs in the oven overnight to dry. Now here's the trick. You don't turn the oven on. All you really need is the heat from the oven light, or if it's if it's a gas stove, even just the pilot light. Those small forms of heat are enough to provide the drying that those herbs will need. So you can do about up to 5 layers at one time, but this may depend, again, on that humidity in your kitchen. It could take longer. You want to check the herbs until they are dry again, that they are dried when they are crumbly or when the stems break when they are bent. And then finally, microwave oven is another form of dehydration that we can do on our herbs. You want to do small batches, maybe this would be a good option for you. But again, we don't want to cook our herbs during that process, so we want to be very careful. And our microwave ovens can really vary a lot from brand to brand or from wattages. So you want to make sure you use your owner's manual and refer to that to make sure that you are doing doing everything correctly. Now, moving on to talking about storing and using dried herbs, you want to place these herbs in an airtight container and store in a cool, dry, and dark place. That's the best storage for our dried herbs. Recommended containers can include things like glass jars, glass canning jars, freezer bags, or airtight plastic containers. And just like other foods that we can dry at home, Herbs can keep up to a year if stored properly. Keep in mind that dried herbs are several times stronger than when we use fresh herbs. So when you're substituting in a recipe, you want to definitely cut down to just maybe a quarter to a third of the amount needed. So if a recipe calls for a tablespoon of fresh oregano, you probably want to look at just using maybe a teaspoon of the dried product. And then here's some recipes that I'd like to share. And just the following slides will be just some different recipes where we can use maybe some of those dried products that we have, or maybe other things that you might purchase from the store or from your farmer's market, whatever it might be. But these are just some different seasoning mixes, and I've given the source as to where they came from. But these are great substitutes for folks that are really trying to find ways to cut down on sodium. So there are several here that we'll look at. So these two particular ones are more of your Spanish food or Mexican food seasonings, fajita seasoning, and then we have a taco seasoning mix. And so just trying to get away from purchasing all those prepackaged products that we're not sure what all is in those products. When you make your own product, you know what goes into it, and you know that there are no preservatives or anything like that. But again, as we use these, we need to use them quicker than we would a product that we buy from the store, just because they are not meant to be shelf stable like those purchased items from the store. We also have a Cajun spice mix and then a chili seasoning mix. You know, when winter comes along, we're all looking for that good bowl of chili, and so having some chili seasoning mix on hand is always a good thing, because then we don't have to worry about buying those products out there that, again, we don't know what's in them. So when we are making our own mixes, we know what's in them, and we can actually, you know, the beauty of it is we can change them up to increase certain flavors or decrease other flavors depending on what your likes and dislikes are. And then looking on the sweeter side, apple pie spice and pumpkin pie spice mixes, or pumpkin spice. You know, these are, as we get to the holidays, these are spice mixes that we do use a lot. And again, rather than spending the money to go buy those containers of these particular items, you can quickly make your own from products that you probably keep in your pantry with all your other spices and seasonings. And then also we have chili spice mix, which is a little bit different than the earlier one, an Italian spice mix, and then a taco spice mix. So these are just from a different reference that I used. So again, these are all just different ideas that you could use in making your own mixes. And there are a lot of different recipes out there. These are just some that I found that are most useful, that we commonly use in our cooking. And so we hope you enjoy learning about herbs and how you can utilize them in your cooking, and also saving those, that not just during the growing time now, but saving those throughout the year so that you can use them through a dried format. You can use them in recipes throughout the winter months and enjoy those for a long time, until we can get to grow them again. So we hope you've enjoyed. We hope you enjoy the recipes, that making some of these things at home to save money, to save your diet, to save space in your pantry, whatever it might be. But just enjoy those, and we hope that you join us again for another program. Thank you.